Plumes of black smoke rise from an Austrian tunnel as a truck crashes into a line of traffic. Moments later, over 10 tons of flammable cargo explode, triggering a firestorm that consumes dozens of trapped cars. The entire tunnel has erupted into flame. As toxic smoke floods the air, firefighters launch a desperate rescue mission to reach motorists fleeing on foot. Amid the chaos stands only one question. How could a simple accident become an unstoppable inferno? What follows is one of Europe's most infamous tunnel disasters. As dawn broke on May 29, 1999, the Strel family of 4 set off on what was supposed to be a summer holiday to Italy. They were among hundreds of motorists filing into the Tauern Tunnel on one of the busiest weekends of the year. The Autobahn connects Austria with northern and southern Europe, forming a vital route beneath the Alps for tourists, commuters, and freight traffic alike. Since entire regions relied on the crossing, it was expected to carry heavy traffic. However, the tunnel opened with limited capacity, as vehicles from both directions were funneled through a single tube. Over the following decades, Tauern became increasingly congested, and by the late 1990s, emergency services worried about its safety during peak periods.
A two-way traffic section is always dangerous. One mistake from one driver and the disaster is complete.
That morning, the Strel family finds themselves stuck in an even longer queue than usual. Their car inches several hundred meters inside the tunnel when traffic suddenly stops at a temporary construction light.
We drove in slowly because there was a convoy on the left side, then the traffic light came and we had to move over to the right.
Seconds later, Herman Strel sees a 40-ton truck accelerating in his rearview mirror. It thunders into the stationary queue at high speed, dragging several vehicles more than 25 meters down the road. They only stop moving when they slam into the tunnel wall and a lorry stopped directly beside Strel's car. He watches as 2 of these vehicles are crushed beneath the truck's trailer with passengers inside. The impact damages their fuel tanks and spills gasoline across the roadway. Moments later, it ignites. As Strel checks on his family, flames begin spreading between the wrecked vehicles, and the fire quickly consumes a truck carrying thousands of flammable aerosol spray paint cans. The heat rapidly intensifies. One by one, the cans begin detonating inside the trailer, sending explosions ripping through the tunnel. Some motorists believe that the tunnel itself is collapsing. In reality, each blast spreads the flames further through the tightly packed traffic, triggering a chain reaction that transforms the tunnel into an uncontrollable inferno. Plumes of thick black smoke rapidly fill the tunnel, rising toward the ceiling where it blocks the overhead lights. With visibility collapsing, panic spreads through the trapped traffic.
There was screaming in the tunnel and bright flames everywhere. Then suddenly it became completely silent. The smoke just rolled over us.
Some motorists attempt to reverse from the crash site, while others abandon their vehicles entirely. But in near total darkness, many survivors have no idea which direction leads outside, let alone where the nearest emergency exits are. The Strel family flee north away from the blaze, feeling their way along tunnel walls toward the exit. As they do, the tunnel's automatic fire sensors trigger an alarm which alerts emergency responders stationed nearby. But several kilometers away, at the southern entrance, traffic continues entering the tunnel, completely unaware of the chaos unfolding ahead. Worse still, the temporary traffic lights remain green and continue to direct vehicles into the traffic jam forming around the crash site. One of them is lorry driver Franz Grunkrantz, who enters the tunnel as part of a convoy of trucks and only realizes something is wrong after hearing warnings crackle over his radio.
There was no sign anything was wrong. Then we noticed someone running, and suddenly I saw black smoke moving along the tunnel ceiling. And then Tony already said over the radio, "Franz, stop. I think something's wrong ahead." The moment I saw the black smoke, I knew going back was 4 or 5 kilometers. You can't run faster than the smoke.
Realizing escape was impossible, Grunkrans and 2 other drivers abandoned their trucks and squeezed into a nearby emergency shelter.
About a minute later came the explosion. At first we thought the tunnel was collapsing, but when it got really hot, we realized there was a major fire. Then we made the emergency call.
Their call is received by the Zetterhaus Voluntary Fire Brigade, whose crews immediately race toward the southern entrance.
During the drive, we received information that 3 people were trapped in an emergency refuge. Our first goal was simply to rescue them.
By the time they arrive, conditions inside have deteriorated dramatically, with thick smoke already spreading kilometers through the tunnel. Equipped with only a light fire vehicle and standard breathing apparatus, firefighters nevertheless push through the darkness in search of the emergency refuge. Meanwhile, Hermann Strell is still hundreds of meters away from safety. In the confusion, he loses sight of his wife and children, just as temperatures near the crash zone climb towards 1,200 degrees Celsius, incinerating everything nearby.
I felt my way along the tunnel wall. I kept bumping into car doors. It was just smoke, 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 and my breathing got worse and worse. I thought, I can't do this, I can't do this.
Thinking his family may already be dead, Strell fumbles toward the north entrance, choking on toxic fumes as he struggles to breathe. Moments later, he emerges from the tunnel with a growing crowd of shocked survivors, hoping that his wife and children are among them. But the rescue is far from over. Dozens of motorists remain trapped deeper inside the tunnel, including some who stayed inside their vehicles, believing they'd offered the safest protection from the growing blaze. For crews attempting to reach them, conditions were becoming unsurvivable. Over the next 40 minutes, additional crews arrive at both tunnel entrances as firefighters struggle to reach the Inferno source. The fire chief quickly orders large ventilation units to be installed at the southern entrance to help clear the smoke. This move allows deeper access into the tunnel. Once inside, however, they discover that sections of the ceiling are collapsing, unable to withstand the intense heat and repeated sound waves from the exploding paint cans. Fearing the entire tunnel could implode, responders are forced to retreat. For the 3 trapped drivers inside the emergency refuge, it's a sign to prepare for the end. Fortunately, the Zetterhaus volunteers attempt a second rescue from the south entrance. Carrying protective escape hoods, they push back into the tunnel and begin checking emergency shelters one by one for trapped survivors. Eventually, they reach Emergency Refuge 47. Inside, Grunkrans and the other 2 drivers are still alive.
We were told the firefighters had to turn back because the heat was too intense. That's when the 3 of us accepted, okay, it's over for us. I think maybe 10 or 15 more minutes and none of us would have survived.
Despite the rescue, firefighters still cannot get close to the center of the Inferno. Large sections of the tunnel are now blocked by burning vehicles, including dozens that had continued entering the tunnel after the fire first began. In the hours that followed, firefighters slowly extinguished burning vehicles as they attempted to reach the fire's source from the south entrance. Coordinating operations at the south portal was already challenging enough when exhausted crews reported they needed a new strategy.
When the first responders came back out, they said it was burning like hell inside. It was just fire, heat you couldn't endure even from a distance.
By mid-morning, commanders realized crews could no longer advance safely from the south entrance. In response, they reversed the tunnel's ventilation system and began attacking the blaze from the north side instead. As crews pushed deeper, the walls were still radiating heat around them. Burnt-out vehicles lined the roadway, and warped metal discs clattered beneath their boots. Only later did they realize they were the melted aluminum wheel rims from destroyed cars. Further ahead was the wrecked truck carrying the aerosol cans. When they reached it, they finally understood the scale of the disaster.
They exploded one after another. Not just the tires, the spray cans detonated continuously. We only saw that afterward.
When that kind of cargo catches fire, everything blows apart. In a tunnel, it's even worse because the pressure has nowhere to escape.
Outside the tunnel, meanwhile, emergency personnel treated survivors suffering from burns and severe smoke inhalation, as families desperately searched for missing relatives. For Herman Strell, a familiar voice suddenly cut through the commotion. His wife and 2 children had escaped the tunnel, badly shaken, but alive. But not everyone was as fortunate. A journalist on the scene later recalled one driver who became separated from his brother during the escape.
A driver and his brother had driven a truck convoy from Crete. When the fire started, both abandoned the truck and ran, but then the brother suddenly realized he'd forgotten papers. He turned back to get them. He was never seen again.
Firefighters continued to battle the blaze into the early hours of May 30th, nearly 20 hours after the initial collision. In the days that followed, they discovered several human remains while clearing debris and monitoring flare-ups. Many of the victims were so badly burned they could only be identified through DNA analysis. The disturbing human toll raised urgent questions about how a routine traffic accident spiraled so catastrophically out of control. Much of the investigation focused on the tunnel itself. Tauern had originally been designed as a 2-bore crossing, separating north and southbound traffic into different tubes. But despite growing congestion, the second tunnel was repeatedly delayed and ultimately never built. Just 2 months before the Tauern disaster, however, 39 people were killed in a similar incident when a truck caught fire inside the Mont Blanc tunnel on the French-Italian border. Like Tauern, motorists became trapped behind the burning vehicle, which allowed the flames to spread faster than emergency crews could respond. The tragedy put a spotlight on the dangers of single-bore tunnels, particularly during construction work, and it left European authorities questioning whether similar disasters could happen elsewhere. Authorities later concluded that the collision was due to the truck driver falling asleep at the wheel. But for survivors like the Strell family, the bigger question was why temporary traffic lights had been placed inside such a heavily congested tunnel in the first place.
For around 10 years afterward, we didn't drive through tunnels anymore. We could all have died, the whole family.
When the case went to trial, the truck driver received a 2-year prison sentence for negligent driving, while authorities immediately moved ahead with plans for a second tube at Tauern. The upgraded version included new ventilation systems, pedestrian escape routes, emergency shelters, and improved access for firefighters. Measures which critics argue could have prevented the fire from becoming uncontrollable. In total, 50 people were injured, while 12 tragically lost their lives. More than 40 vehicles were destroyed in the Inferno, which left lasting psychological trauma among many survivors and responders who witnessed it firsthand. If you found this video interesting, please consider subscribing to catch more of our videos.